Hello everyone, Bag here. With 2.5 giving us yet another world to farm through Divergent Universe, every player must make the same difficult choice. Do you farm for optimal damage, or do you farm for the funny banana orb? With every player getting free planar drops each week, the burden of choice on what to farm is something that everyone has to deal with, which is why I want to rank each planar world in terms of what is the most efficient to farm for your account. Now, obviously, different accounts need different things, so I'm going to be looking in more of a general sense of, does any account scenario even have a reason to farm this world, and if so, how useful is it to the account as a whole? Which means that yes, just like with my character tier lists, being universal is the name of the game here. Niche sets may be the best for certain units, but if you can cover a lot of bases by farming one world, that world is generally going to place higher. Anyways, let's not waste any more time and get on with the list. Also, yeah, we're not going in tiering order this time, but rather with world number order. So first off is World 3, with the Space Sealing Station and Fleet of the Ageless. These two relics both suffer from the same problem. While their buffs are good, they are individually outclassed by other options for carries and supports respectively. Fleet is a great support set with an easier requirement for its effect than Keel, but since Keel is slightly, and I do mean slightly, better with its buffing, there's no real reason to use it unless if you need the attack specifically, like with Robin or when supporting Dot. For Space Sealing Station, it is a very generalist option, but it's basically never the best for any carry. So while it's maybe recommendable for accounts who have a lot of units to build up at the same time, the sets that give free crit rate are still generally better even if they are not the perfect match for the unit, since free crit rate is crazy value for gearing that can't exactly be translated into damage calcs. I'll give this world a solid B tier. It's really never the best world to go for, but it's probably the most widely universal world here, which gives it some points. Next, World 4. We have Talia and Von Whack. These are both sets that have very specific yet plausible use conditions. The main user of Talia is Boothil, since the other break set is specific for fire weakness, thanks Hoyo. While other supports can run this set, they are usually better off with supporting sets rather than getting the extra help to reach their personal stat benchmarks. With Von Whack, not only does the 5% ER help with some tight energy rotations, but the advanced forwarding at the start of battle gives your supports the ability to set up their buffs before the rest of the team can go, which is important if your carry is naturally very fast. The problem is that this effect only happens on the first wave, and generally, the second wave of MOC or second phase of Apocalyptic Shadow are the more demanding phases to clear. Still, a saved cycle is a saved cycle, so in the right scenario, this set can be the difference maker for your clear. I'll put this one in the C tier. The sets are both niche and are only applicable to a few units, but they are unopposed in their strengths. I'd recommend any account to get at least one functional set of Von Whack. It's more worth it than you might think. Next, yeesh, World 5. This should be fast, neither of these sets are very good. We have Pan-Cosmic, which gives effect hit rate, and Celestial Differentiator, which gives crit rate for the user's first attack. I felt the need to read these out instead of just showing them, as it's likely that most people here don't know what either of these do. Celestial is probably the worst set in the game outright. I have never, in all of my time playing or watching this game, seen anyone use it, and that's for a good reason. The first attack in a fight is usually never your most important one, and while the base crit damage is nice, it's only equal to the other crit sets in crit value while giving nothing else in value. Pan-Cosmic can be used for Nihildi supports, most notably with Jiaoshu and Black Swan, to hit their effect hit rate thresholds. But for Jiaoshu, using this set means that you are losing out on not buffing your team with something like Fleet or Keel. For Black Swan, this is technically her best set, but it's so close with Glamoth that the incremental gains are really not worth going out of your way to farm this entire set. I would really never recommend to farm either of these sets. Meeting stat benchmarks is less important for supports through set stats, since substats can always be better optimized. Into the D tier this world goes. For World 6, we have Peak and Trash in the same world. Salsodo, for the majority of the game's lifespan, has been the universal set for follow-up units, while still giving useful ult damage for units like Argenti. However, over time, the different niches that Salsodo used to cover have slowly been systematically power crept by other sets, leaving Salsodo to mostly just be a jack-of-all-trades, master-of-none set. It's like World 3 sets in that if you have it, you can use it, but for a given unit, I wouldn't recommend to farm a new set for it. It's solid but outclassed. And for Belobog, the extra 15% defense might be nice for Aventurine, but other than that, it has basically zero uses. just because there are so few preservation units who could even want this set. Aventurine can always just run Salsodo or Duran for better damage, or Keel for better supporting. The 15% defense is nice, but is ultimately not something to specifically aim for. For something like this world, it's mostly just recommendable to use Relic Fragments to snipe for Salsodo if you really want it. This advice is recommendable for a couple of other sets we've already talked about, like Von Whack, but I think it's the most apparent here. For this ranking, I'm looking specifically at how optimal it is to use your weekly runs on these worlds. So World 6 drops a lot for being generally unoptimal nowadays. Unlike Von Whack, in which you really only care about the main stats, Salsodo being a carry set means that it's a lot more difficult to get in and get out of this world really quickly, so I'll put it in the C tier. Also, if you are enjoying this video so far and you want to see more HSR meta content, make sure to subscribe. Okay, sorry, back to the vid. Here we go everyone, I might have flubbed a bit calling Salsodo peak, when in reality this entire world is peak. Keel is the generally recommendable support set. If you don't need another set for a specific support, just run Keel, it's pretty simple. Rudolin is also pretty nice, even if your damage isn't solely from basic or skills, the crit rate is still a nice buff for any unit, but with how the meta has been recently, where most new carries are either breaking or follow-up-ing, Rudolin has taken a bit of a back seat, but its effect is so widely applicable that I can see it in the same vein as Sparkle, currently on the sidelines but with the future potential to be meta if the future calls for its buffing. Keel honestly by itself just brings this world up so much, and Rudolin is still strong enough for it to be good to farm, since it hasn't been outclassed in its specific niche like Salsodo has. The way I see things, this is the default world to run if you don't have any other sets to go for, as you can never ever have enough good Keel ropes and spheres. Into the S tier it goes. World 8, on the other hand, is a bit more contentious, since Glamoth is a pretty good set that is unfortunately held back by a really strict effect condition. A lot of the newer carries usually like to be slower while relying on their supports to action advance them forward, meaning that this 135 speed threshold can be difficult to hit for them. And even then, for someone like, for example, Fei Xiao, other sets are generally still better to farm. This is the best set currently for Dot, however, which is a niche that will surely continue to grow after being ignored for 5 patches straight. I would never really recommend this set over its competition for anyone but Dot, but it can be usable if you are a speed boost enjoyer. For Penacony, this gives the same 5% ER as Von Whack while giving a damage boost, but this damage boost is also pretty strict in its condition. Not only can it be difficult to pair supports and carries together for this buff, but this is also less effective in teams with more than one damage dealers, which is a team comp that has steadily continued to be more popular as the meta evolves. The highs of this set can be better than Keel, but the upside of Keel is that you don't really have to think about it, you can just use it whenever, while Penacony is specific based on a team. It is nice to have, but it's rather niche in when it can be the real difference maker. Overall, this world hits the A tier for me, but it's kind of on the low side. It's good for certain accounts, but the strict conditions means that only a couple of units will really be able to shine from what you farm from here. Now to World 9, which has definitely carved a niche for itself. First, with Sigonia, this is the Pure Fiction set, giving an insane 48 crit value at max stacks, which should be easy to stack up early on in the run. Since Pure Fiction is usually the weak spot for a lot of accounts, having a good set here can be a huge difference maker. After all, getting up to 60k in Pure Fiction is a lot more pressing for people on average than clearing Memory of Chaos just one cycle faster. While Duran and Salsodo can get the job done here too while being usable in other modes, this set not having any follow-up restrictions means that you can use it on any Pure Fiction carry, from Argenti to Seele to even potentially Acheron. It's a set limited to one mode, which does hurt how universal it is, but the effect is so easy to stack that you'll definitely have a use for it if you have it. Like how Sparkle and Rudolin have the same kind of tier standing, Sigonia and the Erudition top tiers are in that spot too. They are niche but dominant when applicable. Izumo, meanwhile, has carved that niche out for itself thanks to recent comps, with all of these units being able to use it very well. However, except for Acheron, everyone else here would prefer either the World 10 set or Rudolin for March, meaning that this set is a lot less dominant than you would initially expect. Being Acheron's best set does give it points though, and it's universal enough that you can farm it for her while still giving it to other units. The theme for this world is niche but strong. If you don't have Acheron, it's very easy for you to entirely ignore this world, but if you do farm it, then you'll have a lot of sets that you won't bench anytime soon. I think A tier is a nice place for it, especially if Pure Fiction gets any more difficult in the future. For World 10, we finally get to the newest heavy hitter, Duran. Duran is basically the best follow-up set, with a fast ramp-up time that gives greater damage bonuses than Salcedo when it's fully maxed out. With how follow-up focused the meta has been for so long, it's more than likely that you have someone who'd like Duran. And while the difference between Duran, Sigonia, and Salcedo is usually only a couple of percentage points, the real difference maker is in the other sets in their respective worlds. Sigonia is held back not just by its specific Pure Fiction niche, but also with Azumo being rather replaceable for anyone but Acheron, and Salcedo is obviously held back by Belobog. But the other set in this world definitely has its own niche, being the best set for Firefly, as well as having a useful 2-piece speed effect. For a Super Break comp, this can be useful for supports for Firefly, since the usual buffing avenues for crit and damage percent don't really matter that much for her. And for anyone who wants a faster ult rotation or SP generation, more speed is always a good thing. I'd give this set the S tier just through Duran being so great to farm, but it can't go above World 7 for not having an equivalent to Keel. Lastly, we have World 11, the newest world. For Lusaka, this is a great set that combines the energy regen of Von Weck and Penacony with a much easier to achieve damage amping passive than Penacony. While the attack that it gives is still slightly worse than Keel, the added ER's utility can easily make up for that difference depending on the support. The main thing holding this set back is that the effect most notably only works on one unit. This is a notable negative because more and more we have seen team comps where the damage is more spread out, either through Robin's flat damage, damage dealing supports, or dual DPS teams. So for these common teams, the set is a lot less effective. It's also worth noting that the first team slot requirement makes this set a little awkward for Yunli and Clara, since it's best to put them in the middle of your team so that they get hit more often. While the effect is good, it falls into the Penacony trap of not being as truly universal as Keel, but I do think it's a step up to Penacony in terms of how universal it can be. Banana Amusement Park, first of all, has a peak design and a peak name, but its niche is rather limited as there are only 2 units right now with summons that deal notable damage. Even then, Topaz can use the Duran set completely fine, meaning that this is only really a Jing Yuan buff to replace Salcedo for him. I can see this set getting a lot better in the future, as this feels like an indication more than anything that we'll be getting more summon carries down the line. For now though, it's a pretty strict world to farm, a more niche but viable Keel, and an extremely niche DPS set. I'll put it in A tier for how great Lusaka can be, but I can see it going to S later depending on how many units end up using Banana Amusement in the future. So that's the list. Obviously, this list varies wildly based on the priorities of your account. This tier list was mostly just to look at the general power of the world for an account as a whole. So the universal sets like Duran or Keel went out over the niche but powerful sets like Lamoth or Izumo. It's generally better for your account if you can farm for multiple units at a time rather than focusing on one unit individually. So stuff like Izumo being usable for units besides Acheron makes it better than Banana Amusement's very strict summon niche. Anyways, I'm done yapping. Follow for more and watch my other vids. Bye!